The electromagnetic spectrum from the Sun that reaches the Earth's surface can be delineated into two categories, UVB and UVA. The longer wavelength, lower energy UVA rays reach further into the dermis than the higher energy, shorter wavelength UVB rays. UVB and UVA have different biological effects on the skin. The predominant acute biologic damage, as well as some chronic damage risks, such as elastosis and squamous carcinogenesis, are associated with the UVB portion of the solar spectrum over UVA in a ratio of approximately 4:1.
UVB, the shortwave burning rays of the sun, cause acute damage to the skin, which includes sunburn, inflammation, pigmentary change, and thickening of the skin. But more importantly, it damages the DNA of the skin cells, which ultimately leads to skin cancer.
UV-induced cellular damage causes inflammatory mediator release in the dermis, initiating the well-known cytokine cascade. Mast cells have been implicated in systemic UV immunosuppression. Histamine induces human keratinocytes to produce prostaglandins that further drive immunosuppression. UV radiation can damage nerve cells, causing them to release neuropeptides and induce mast cell degranulation. Membrane lipid peroxidation occurs as a result of free oxygen radical generation, which can trigger the production of platelet activating factor and immunosuppressive cytokines. The microvasculature dilates to an extreme, and blood flow is shunted to more superficial plexuses to give the familiar sunburn appearance.
The UVA, the longer wave ultraviolet light, penetrates deeper, causes more in the way of chronic damage, aging of the skin, but indirectly can cause development of skin cancer through development of reactive oxygen species.
After exposure to both UVA and UVB radiation, Langerhans cells, the principal antigen-presenting cells of the epidermis, become depleted. UVA is responsible for photoaging of the skin through remodeling of the extracellular matrix. UVA exposure also produces both immediate pigment darkening, or IPD, and persistent pigment darkening, or PPD.
Since we now recognize that both these rays are important, it's very essential that a sunscreen have good protection through the entire spectrum of UVB and UVA. Currently available sunscreens have a fairly good effect against blocking UVB, the burning rays of the sun. However, their effect on blocking UVA is fairly inconsistent. We know that some of them may protect UVB quite well, but have very little protection for UVA. An ideal sunscreen would have a broad range of protection, a high level of protection, be durable, last for a longer period of time, be aesthetically acceptable, and easy to use.
The latest innovation for UVA protection in the United States has been the inclusion of avobenzone into the FDA monograph in 1996. Until then, the approved FDA absorbers lacked either the breadth or height of protection over the entire UVA spectrum. The benzophenones and physical blockers were the only agents that could provide protection beyond 320 nanometers. The incorporation of avobenzone into the approved list of sunscreens provided the ability to build both the height and the breadth of the protection of the sunscreens out to and beyond 370 nanometers.
Avobenzone is an excellent UVA sunscreen. Unfortunately, it's not very stable, so that it degrades with sun exposure and limits its effectiveness as a sunscreen.
As avobenzone absorbs ultraviolet light from the sun, primarily UVA, but also some UVB, the energy becomes too strong for avobenzone's molecular bonds. And avobenzone typically breaks apart when it absorbs sufficient energy from sunlight. These results show the UV absorbance profile for a marketed sunscreen product. When exposed to increasing levels of UV irradiation, its ability to absorb UV decreases greatly. Trademarked as Helioplex, a photostable sunscreen system with avobenzone and oxybenzone as the active ingredients, together with 2,6-naphthalate, DEHN, as an inactive sunscreen ingredient, does not degrade when exposed to continuous UV exposure. Additional UVB filters are added in product formulations to protect against UVB exposure and to build the overall SPF of the product. Now when avobenzone is exposed to UV radiation, the Helioplex formulation continues photoprotection from UVA exposure. DEHN accepts the energy from avobenzone and then transfers it to the oxybenzone, which then fluoresces the energy as harmless red light, without sacrificing the ability of the avobenzone to absorb the next photon.
We've known about the effects of UVA on the skin for a long time. It's important now that we have good technology that will allow us to have effective protection from these rays for longer periods of time.
A spectral scan of Neutrogena UltraShear SPF 55 with Helioplex on the left, compared with a marketed brand on the right, shows the new product with Helioplex does not degrade in sunlight after exposure to the equivalent of 5 hours of sunlight, unlike the other product on the right. Neutrogena UltraShear SPF 55 with Helioplex was compared with U.S. products that have a high SPF. The Neutrogena product exhibited the widest breadth and highest protection in the UVA range. Spectral scan results from Neutrogena UltraShear SPF 55 with Helioplex demonstrated superior UVA protection than a product containing 20% zinc oxide and one containing 9% titanium dioxide. Sunscreen with Helioplex helps reduce free radical formation in the skin. When sunscreen is applied evenly to the volar forearm, the sites to which sunscreen stabilized with Helioplex was applied generated 76% fewer free radicals compared with untreated sites, whereas sites to which non-photostable sunscreen, that is, without Helioplex, was applied, generated 30% fewer free radicals. The difference between sunscreens was significant. P was less than 0.001.
The introduction of Helioplex is an important advance because it allows a stabilization of avobenzone and effective UVA sunscreen. This allows this avobenzone to be more active over a longer period of time.
Helioplex, a new photostable technology in sunscreens. Offering broad-spectrum, high-level, durable photoprotection. Helioplex, now available in the following Neutrogena products. UltraShear Sunblock SPF 55 with Helioplex. Fresh Cooling Body Mist Sunblock SPF 30 and SPF 45 with Helioplex. And Age Shield Sunblock SPF 30 and SPF 45 with Helioplex. Helioplex, Next Generation Sun Protection from Neutrogena.